Chef Curry serves up a vintage 50 burger. The Mavericks were reportedly interested in another All-NBA Anthony before they dealt Luka to the Lakers. LeBron is sick of your weird energy, and we've got a rapid-fire weekend preview that includes a massive matchup between the Cavs and the Celtics. That's all today on Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On NBA. Thanks so much for making us your first listen of the day. We are free. We are available wherever you get your podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. I'm Doug Branson, host of Locked On Hornets, and your Shot Clock Sherpa, guiding you through the NBA's biggest stories every day with the help of Locked On's local experts. And with me are two of Locked On's premier national NBA experts. From the Locked On Nuggets podcast and senior NBA writer for the Action Network, he's the man of 1,000 podcasts. It's Matt Moore. Matt, if you could only watch one highlight for the rest of your life, would it be the Shaedon Sharpe dunk that we saw yesterday or the full court dime that Luka threw to LeBron right on the money in last night's game?
No, it would be something involving mascots, Doug. It's always going to be something involving mascots.
And one of the Lopez brothers, right? Exactly. All right. And from the Locked On Bulls podcast, the Prince of Petty, we've got Hayes. Hayes, the 76ers have not won a single basketball game since the Eagles won the Super Bowl. I don't have a question. That's just incredible, and I wanted you to know about it.
The city of Philly deserves no less.
Oh, all right. Firing on a Friday. I like it. Let's get into some of the stuff that we saw last night, and we have to start with Steph Curry. He dropped 56 points, and the Warriors, they needed every single one of them in a comeback win over the Orlando Magic. Matt, what's going through your mind when you watch a performance like this from a 36-year-old Steph Curry?
Steph gonna Steph, man. This is one of the reasons why I think that Steph Curry is actually a demigod. Like, that to me is the best explanation for this. You got to understand, like, what we could talk about the medical science stuff about players playing later into their careers, about how good these guys still are in their late 30s and how special I think this generation is in particular with regards to that. But Steph's ability to make shots is not human. There is nothing human about it, and it will never be topped. We will never. I'm always like, well, you got to understand the future is infinite. So as far as we know it right now, so it's so long. Surely everything will be. No, we will never, ever, ever see a better shooter than Steph Curry. There is nothing like him. We will never see a better one. This is it. This is the best you're going to get right here.
Hayes, do you think we'll ever see anything like Steph again? And touching on something that Matt just touched on there, when you think about Steph and LeBron and KD and what they're doing at their respective ages, night in, night out, is it science? Is it magic? Is it coincidence that we're seeing all of this all-world talent at ages where we used to see pretty consistent, steep star declines?
The answer to all those questions and options is yes. It's a combination of all of that. A little witchcraft, a little science. But what we see Steph do, like, no, we'll never see another guy like Steph Curry in the league. I believe that wholeheartedly. As far as the ages that KD and LeBron and Steph, they're doing this in, like, these are guys that, you know, Matt said it on the last, like, 3 episodes, like, nobody loves basketball more than Kevin Durant. Nobody takes putting the work into their body more seriously than LeBron James, even though we recently heard a story from Dwayne Wade that apparently LeBron used to eat a bag of chocolate chip cookies on every plane trip, which is crazy to hear.
I knew it. I knew that was a secret. I knew, and I've been doing it all along.
That's why you're still going, Doug.
Just eat more chocolate chip cookies is apparently the thing there. But yeah, what these guys are able to do at this age, man, it's special. What we're witnessing, man, it's a special era of basketball to watch these guys still be able to get to work here this late into their career.
One guy that did not have it last night was the newest Warrior, Jimmy Butler. Here's Locked On Warriors with more on that.
You know what? Jimmy Butler wasn't particularly good tonight, but his presence is still enough to give that extra couple inches of space. The fact that Moody and Pajemski are playing so much better that helps to just give that extra inch of space. Jimmy Butler isn't Jimmy Butler yet. A huge part of that is just conditioning. He sat out for a long time, came back, started to find a rhythm, then had the whole All-Star break to sit out, which for him was, over a week. I get it, but he is going to have to start to look for his shot more at some point. These are like the smaller problems that when you have what they now have, which is both juice and, depth, you can afford to play through some of this stuff because, Steph Curry will save you on a night. And you know what? Sometime before the end of the season, Jimmy Butler's going to save you on a night when Steph Curry doesn't have it.
All right, so the number's not great for Jimmy Butler, but you heard the argument there that the space that he provides is sometimes more important. Hayes, who will the Warriors need more sort of Superman, put the team on your back type of games from to contend in the Western Conference playoffs, Steph Curry or Jimmy Butler?
That's more Superman type games. I'll still say Steph, right? Because you don't need Jimmy to always be superhuman for what he provides and how defenses still have to play for him. For Steph to go off like that, that's the key there. If you can get Steph to be Superman and to stay healthy and be things like that, Jimmy just has to be Jimmy. And so, when you get those Superman type performances from Jimmy, they're great. But I say that the Warriors are still going to need that. But Jimmy has to watch here. As long as it doesn't turn into a churn, we're fine. But we're now 2 straight games of him scoring in single digits since joining the Golden State Warriors. Got to watch that a little bit.
Been more of those than not down the stretch here of his career. The question of who are they going to need more Superman games to contend? The answer is nobody, because they're not going to contend. Not a contender. Look, I think this team's good. Maybe this team is going to make one of those runs, right? Maybe Jimmy maybe Jimmy has like a series where he goes absolutely ridiculously insane. Maybe they play the Bucks in the first round. Wait, no, that's not going to happen. Maybe Steph breaks what has always kind of been a trend of like Steph Curry's like really good in the playoffs, but he's not like a world breaker. He's never been that. That's why he only got 1 Finals MVP out of the run. He's amazing. I'm not like knocking Steph. He's always consistently good, but he's not one of these guys where it's like, God, he was insane. And they don't really have anybody else. Draymond's not going to do it. So, if they win, it's going to be defense and enough offense. And that to me is kind of the formula they're going to have to follow.
Yeah, I think part of the reasoning behind getting Jimmy Butler to the Warriors was that you were going to get a little bit of playoff Jimmy. So I think they may need a few more of those Jimmy games than they will need of the Steph games. Let us know what you think on YouTube, youtube.com/@LockedOnHornets. Got an update here on a news story that we've been covering a lot. The Luka Doncic trade to the Los Angeles Lakers.
What story has been, we talked about a little bit?
Well, I know, but we've got some new news. In Sam Amick's latest drop for The Athletic, he had a pretty stunning nugget on the lead up to the Mavericks dealing Luka Doncic to the Lakers. Here's the quote. While this spicy what-if scenario never gained any traction, league sources tell The Athletic that the Mavericks and Timberwolves informally discussed the prospect of swapping Doncic for 23-year-old three-time All-Star Anthony Edwards in the weeks before the Lakers deal went down. More specifically, Mavs general manager Nico Harrison reached out to the Timberwolves and asked if there was any chance they'd be willing to trade Edwards. He was promptly told no. The Timberwolves, league sources say, were stunned that Dallas was contemplating parting ways with Doncic, unquote. Well, that makes 2 teams. Matt, make this make sense to me. I thought that the Mavs and the Lakers, they were the only 2 teams that knew about this. LeBron didn't know about it. Nobody knew about it except 2 guys. What's going on here?
I think they were very careful still. The idea has kind of been that they did not like shop this around still, that this was still maybe there was one other team that they involved here. I do think that probably one of the reasons this didn't go any further is if you're the Wolves and you hear this, you think you're getting played. You're like, well, what would you do it for Luka? Why would you ask that question? Because you're clearly not going to trade Luka Doncic. And you're going to say no, versus hey, we'll do this. There's also other complications. There's also the question of if you're trading as Luka, what's wrong with him? Which Rob Pelinka was not in a position to ask, nor should anybody really ask. Just take the deal. I do think that ultimately the way that Nico Harrison went about this is still completely baffling, and we're going to be wondering about it for years. This is the over under on books about the trade is going to be 1.5. We're going to get at least 2 books written about this trade. It's more important. This trade is more important than any title that has been won in this decade. Think about that.
Nico Harrison, man. I like, you would think that if you called and first you get laughed at by the GM of the Lakers, then you have to say no, seriously, like we want to trade Luka. It's, at some point, Nico Harrison should have just woke up and realized, like, you're probably not making a really good decision. But it is good to hear that they at least called some other teams. I still think it's never going to change my thought process that they should at least try to start a bidding war or something, do something sensible there. But apparently Nico Harrison was hell bent on trading Luka Doncic, and we'll see where this story ends up. But Matt saying some books are going to be written on this. I can't wait. I can't wait for the Hulu documentary on the Luka Doncic trade in 20 years.
I'm honestly just impressed that Nico knew about Anthony Edwards because he signed to Adidas. I didn't know he knew anybody that wasn't Nike.
I just love the mental image of Nico Harrison hearing Rob Pelinka laugh and saying, why does everyone keep reacting to that like that? You're the second person. I don't understand. All right, coming up on the Locked On NBA podcast, we're not done talking about Anthony Edwards. He picked up 2 technicals last night and was ejected from the game against the Los Angeles Lakers, but it may have further implications to that. Plus, there's a lot of talk about who the next face of the league will be, and we got an interesting quote from LeBron James on that. That's ahead on Locked On NBA. Today's episode of Locked On NBA is brought to you by FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, live bets can be placed throughout the game. If you miss the opening tip-off, no big deal. Want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback? You can stay in the action. Looking for a bigger payout? Combine live bets into a single game or a same game parlay. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if their first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for a shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. More Locked On NBA ahead. Thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Your favorite NBA team has a free daily newsletter. Go to LockedOnDaily.com, subscribe, stay up to date with local expert analysis and amazing writing from Katie Heindel, Mike Shearer, and Locked On Fantasy Basketball tips from Josh Lloyd. Anthony Edwards picked up 2 technicals last night on the way to a Wolves loss to the Los Angeles Lakers. But as you'll hear from Locked On Wolves host Ben Beacon, this could have huge implications beyond just getting ejected for a regular season game.
First technical was weak. Don't get involved, Ant, but it was a weak call. The second one, also weak. The throwing the ball in the stands thing, but Ant's got to be smarter because he's already got the 1 technical, right? Like he can't put himself in that situation. It's not a great look. It's kind of tantrumy, but I get it. I get Ant's frustration, but Ant has to think smarter than that. The Wolves were kind of on the upswing in this game, and it halted a little bit of momentum in the moment. And now he's been suspended for the Utah game on Friday night because it was his 16th tech of the year. And now for every 2 technicals after this, when he gets to 18, when he gets to 20, when he gets to 22, it's another game suspension. And he can't have that.
Hayes, how worried should Wolves fans be over Ant's technical situation as we get closer to the postseason?
I wouldn't worry about it at all. I know that he's a fiery player, and I'm not saying he's not going to get another tech, but I think as you get closer, and especially in the playoffs, Anthony Edwards is going to understand how important it is to have him on the basketball court. And I think he's a competitor. And I think that with how he's called himself out and called his teammates out over their performances at sometimes during the season, they've had times of coming out of that and playing much better. I think you're going to see a very focused Anthony Edwards come playoff time. I'm not going to worry about it too much.
Control what you can control. That to me is the whole thing here. Is like you can't control a lot. You're so important, though, that you got to be able to control what you can control. You can't get involved in all this other stuff. And he's got to be able to set that tone because he's got to be available. I talk a lot on the show about leadership, and he's a very young guy, but he's got to be the leader for this team. And that means that he's got to be available in order to do that. That said, I'm kind of with Hayes here. Like, you can control these kind of things. Like, you can just not go psycho. You can curtail these things. The only person I've ever seen who was unable to kind of avoid this pattern, there's 2 people. It's Dennis Rodman and Draymond. Those are the only 2 people I've ever seen. Ant can pull back on the throttle a little bit and be okay.
All right, the Lakers beat the Wolves. Steph Curry, not the only old guy still putting up absurd numbers. LeBron James had 33, 17, and 6. There's been a lot of talk about the face of the league around the league lately. Who will take LeBron's place when he finally hangs it up? Anthony Edwards says he wants no part of it. It doesn't seem like Nikola Jokic is very interested in the title either. LeBron was asked about it last night and had this to say, quote, "Why do you want to be the face of the league when all the people that cover our game and talk about our game on a day-to-day basis bleep on everybody? Obviously, I didn't ask for it. I feel Ant. I understand. This is weird energy when it comes to that," unquote. Matt, are you with LeBron here, or does he sound a little cranky?
Did the man that has literally the words "chosen one" written across his back in ink really say that he didn't ask for it? Really? I understand the frustrations with how the league is covered. I understand the frustrations with how much negativity there is in the discourse. I understand what it's like to constantly turn on anything and be exposed to that. On the other hand, really? Mr. $50 million a year is constantly praised as the greatest of all time or second greatest of all time. Unanimously considered the best player of his generation, constantly praised for all of the amazing things about his career. Really? It's all negative? There's bad that comes with the good. And there's so much good that these guys get, and they don't want any of the bad. And that's frustrating when it's just like, it's okay, man. Like, a responsible thing here is like, yeah, it takes a lot. You got to be strong enough to deal with everything that it comes with, but it's worth it because you get to know for the rest of your life that was your legacy to the game, was you were the face of the NBA. And I think there's value in that. I understand his frustration. I also think like there's more praise than these guys realize. They just don't hear it. They only choose to hear the negative. And maybe that's what makes them great competitors, Hayes.
Well, I think the negative is also a little bit louder, right? Like, especially in this day and age where players can't unplug from social media, and there's always somebody ready to tell you that you suck or whatever else, you're not as good as this other player. The question that I have is and I mean this as a legitimate question. I was 15 years old when LeBron James got drafted, which is crazy to say. And I don't remember the transition from Mike to Kobe to LeBron and Kobe and LeBron. Like, is this always a thing that happens towards the end of a star player? Like, you have to have this conversation on the face of the league. Let's stop talking about it. If somebody's going to be the face of the league, they're going to develop and turn into the face of the league. You won't have to ask that question. All this talk about who's the next face, I get it as like, heck, we're going to have it here probably as content creators, but stop trying to anoint somebody the next face of the league and let them earn it. That's my biggest thing. Let them earn being the next face of the league.
Hey, you got to blame Jordan for this, for setting an unreasonable standard. That's the thing. It's like Jordan's the one that set the standard. Now everybody thinks, and I'll also say it's not just because of Jordan. It's that period before Kobe's kind of ascension. Because you got to remember, like Kobe in 2003, way different from how we looked at him in 2011. Like, very different. Right? Like, there was a period after where it was really like the NBA's kind of lost between 98 and about 2005 when LeBron started to ascend. And when Kobe started, when Kobe started to get help in 2008 was really kind of when that started to change. And that's the year the Celtics got the big three too. That period is kind of like a forgotten era in NBA basketball. And that's the concern, is that you always have somebody, a superstar, to bring it up. Here's the idea. What about the teams? How about like just the teams? How about we just root for good teams and the teams define things in a team sport? And we peel back a little bit on the superstar stuff, just like a little bit.
But there has always been a marketing element to this. Like, the NBA can sell, certain players to fans and watch these certain players on certain night more than they could teams. But I guess my question is, to Hayes' point, can someone win their way to being face of the league? Like, if Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, if the Thunder win the next two titles, do we automatically, or is there more to it? There seems to be more to it than that, right? Like LeBron James, having those titles coming into the league, chosen one, King James, like there seems to be something ephemeral that on top of, yes, you also have to win the titles.
Jokic has 3 MVPs in the title. He is considered to be the best player in the league by everyone. He's the best player in the world, and he
doesn't want. He wants to hang with his horses, right? That's the problem. Yeah. He doesn't want the
right. And so like that's the kind of the thing is like you need somebody that. And here's the thing: I don't buy Ant saying that he doesn't want it at all. I do not buy it. Not buying that one, man. I also just think that like. A player will come along who wants it is Victor. Victor wants it. Hope the blood clots are okay. Victor wants it. He wants to be that. Also, I'll just tell you want to know who the face of the league is going to be? It's going to be Luka Doncic. It's going to be Luka Doncic. That's what it's going to be. And you want to know why that may have been in question before, but it's not now. You know why? Because now he's a Laker, Nico Harrison. Good job. Nice work.
Yeah, best player on the most marketable team. If they win titles, he smiles. Yep. Seems to be a happy-go-lucky kind of player. I think you're onto something, Matt. Let us know what you think. Who will be the next face of the league after LeBron hangs it up? YouTube.com/@LockedOnNBA. Leave us a comment. We read the comments on the show, so check it out and leave us your thoughts. Coming up on this Friday edition of the Locked On NBA podcast, we're going to do a rapid-fire weekend preview plus one of our favorite segments, our favorite things of the week, all coming up. Thanks again for making us your first listen every day, every week. It's time for a weekend preview, rapid fire style. We begin with the Cavs and the Celtics facing off tonight. Let's go to both local experts, John Corrales of Locked On Celtics and Danny Cunningham of Locked On Cavs, for which players they think will be the deciders tonight and possibly in a Eastern Conference Finals matchup.
I think there are definitely levels that both teams can reach. I still think the Celtics are not at their ultimate level. We've only just seen what Jason Tatum almost like a fully unlocked Jason Tatum has been like. Tatum could show the Cavs like a new element of his playmaking, and that's something that maybe we can see elevate into an Eastern Conference Finals.
And if the Cavs are going to win a series against Boston, they need Evan Mobley to be the guy that he was in the first game against the Boston Celtics. Go back to that game on November 19th, and he played 38 minutes, which I believe is still the most minutes he's played in a game, but he was 8 of 13 from the floor, scored 22 points, 11 boards, 6 assists. If that is who Evan Mobley is on Friday night, I feel very confident about the Cavs winning.
So listening to both of those podcasts, it seems like John and Danny are ascribing some, if not a lot of meaning to tonight's matchup. I wonder, Hayes, are you looking at this matchup and saying, actually, we can glean some things for a potential postseason matchup? And if so, what's going to be the difference tonight?
I mean, I think you could definitely take away some things from it. I don't want to act like it's going to be a 1-for-1. Playoff basketball can be very, very different, especially by the time these two teams face off against each other. Who knows what they've done and what type of rotations they've worked out in the playoffs. As far as what's going to be different, I think just both teams being relatively fully healthy, and what they've already learned from their matchups. But other than that, learn something. Game's important, but don't take it as this is exactly how the playoff series is going to work out.
Regular season matchups, the win-loss doesn't tell you anything. The way that the teams defend each other, the way that the matchups one-on-one go, and how they defend certain actions are really important. Now, there's exceptions to this. Like the Wolves came into the Sun series last year and completely flipped the script on how they had defended Phoenix. And so everyone that was like, well, look, Phoenix killed them in the regular season, they're going to win this series, got absolutely shown up because the Wolves changed it. That's a question I have about the Knicks for another day, by the way. But in this one, to me, Cavs fans have told me that it's all about the offense, that they got to be able to score. And that's been their problem in this matchup. To me, it's still the defensive side. They have allowed 48 plus 3-point attempts by Boston in 2 of the 3 matchups. They cannot allow that many 3-point attempts. The number one thing, if you make Boston beat you with 2s, you are going to be in a pretty good spot. You have to be able to contain the 3-point attempts. If Cleveland can't do that, I'm writing off this matchup in favor of Boston. You have to be able to demonstrate that you can contain the number of threes that Boston gets up to get them out of their comfort zone. You let them play Celtics basketball, you're not beating them 4 out of 7.
Matt, are you more excited about this game or the Lakers-Clippers 2-game series this weekend, both of those in the Staples Center, or is there another matchup that you are more excited about?
No, it's this one. This one's amazing. This is two title contenders. Lakers Clippers is a marketing exhibition. Like, no, like this is absolutely there's absolutely nothing. No, like, come on, man. It's like and Hayes, hit me with it's the Clippers, please.
Yeah, it's come on. It's the Los Angeles Clippers.
But there's no way that there's any chance here for that being actually like a serious matchup with actual stakes in the Western Conference. This is the one for sure.
All right, Greg Popovich met with the Spurs this week and told them he will not return this season. If he doesn't return to the Spurs next season, will it impact the rebuild that they're currently under? That was a topic on Locked On Spurs. Let's take a listen to that.
That's going to impact the rebuild as far as attracting free agents. Pop was a big draw. You know, I want to play for Pop. You know, Pop's the player's coach and all that stuff. But do you think it's really going to impact the rebuild?
Not necessarily, because everybody wants to play with, well, I think a lot of people want to play with Victor Wembanyama. I will say this, does not having Coach Pop moving forward, does that stall the rebuild a little bit? Well, by default, yes. He's the winningest coach of all time, and many will argue the greatest NBA coach of all time.
Hayes, buy or sell, this having a major impact on the Spurs' ability to rebuild and contend as soon as possible?
Yeah, I think it does, because Greg Popovich is that guy. He's the best coach in NBA history. I mean, no offense to Phil Jackson, but Greg Popovich is the best coach in NBA history, in my opinion. So, yeah, it affects it. But, I mean, the Spurs still have the culture there. They still have Wemby. So they still are in a really good place to attract free agents. They got to find out who the next head coach is going to be. But to say that it doesn't affect it, I couldn't say that possibly at all. It affects it in a large margin, and especially developing young players.
I think the Spurs organization is so good they'll be okay. I think it affects it, but I don't think it's a huge impact. Also, I think it's one of those things where this could have happened at some point anyway. Like, this is just, part of the process of getting older. And, Pop, even if he is unable to return or if it takes him longer, he's still going to be there as a sounding board. He's still going to be there as somebody who's got input. He's still going to be there to provide guidance for the organization. So I'm optimistic that this won't derail things, even if it does impact it.
All right, time for our weekly staple favorite things of the week. Flip a coin. Hayes, you're up first.
My favorite thing of the week today has been watching, and again, you guys know I always like to go to this for my time to talk about my Bulls. Watching Bulls Twitter.
Bulls Corner.
Implode.
Favorite things of the week has turned into Bulls Corner. I love
Bulls
it.
Corner, yeah. Watching Bulls Twitter completely implode about Josh Giddey and his recent hot streak and what his next contract can look like, considering that he can only sign a 5-year max and the Bulls are at least 8 years away from contending. It's just like watching everybody, all the think pieces and everything that's flying around. It's like, it's the Caleb Williams and Justin Fields conversation all over again. Like, just shut up. Shut up, Bulls fans.
All right.
Favorite is we're stretching the words of that.
I'm an anarchist. I'm Joker. I love watching the world burn. Matt.
Fair enough. Dog chasing cars. What would you do if you caught one? I'm going to go with Pistons beating the Celtics this week, just to have that arena. For young fans, Detroit was always like an incredible crowd and has always been like an incredible basketball city. Like, they have been such a huge part of the NBA, going back to the Bad Boys, and you have the 2000s run with Sheed and Billups and Rip Hamilton and Tayshaun Prince and those guys. So to see, after such a long drought, that building rocking that way was absolutely awesome. It's a new arena, but it was still really great to see Detroit basketball back in that kind of a level. Having George Blaha, who to me is one of the best play-by-play announcers on a team level we've ever seen, get to call a season like this is absolutely awesome. So, the question is always, well, what are you going to do in the playoffs? Who cares, man? The Pistons are having a great, fun season. Their fans get to be happy. Kuka Hill gets to actually be happy for once, and that makes me very happy. That's my favorite thing of the week is the Pistons and the great energy around their win over the Celtics.
You just reminded me that one of my favorite things of the week is Kuka Hill cutting wrestling promos on Locked On Pistons. Yes. And we played some of that footage this week. So that was fantastic. If Hayes always turns favorite things of the week into Bulls Corner, I seem to somehow always turn it into Celtics Corner. But most of the time, I'm talking about the madman Joe Mazzulla. I'm taking a Mazzulla break, but I am sticking with the Boston Celtics. And I'm actually going to do a first here for favorite things of the week and actually play some video of a pregame huddle between amongst the Boston Celtics. Let's take a look at that. Kristaps Porzingis saying, "Where my doggies at?" Now that's funny, where my doggies at. But also what's funny is you can hear him in the second "where my doggies at" screaming. And my question to Kristaps is like, what kind of dog do you have that sounds like that? Let's take a listen one more time. Whose dog sounds like
He's got huskies. That's the answer.
That does sound like a husky.
He's got huskies.
That does sound like a husky.
That's the thing. Imagine he's got that doggy in him as a meme. Imagine that. Where my doggies at? Oh, we got to have that on the soundboard now.
I love it. All right, let us know what your favorite thing of the NBA week was on YouTube, youtube.com/@LockedOnNBA. If you like what you heard today, subscribe to Locked On NBA wherever you get podcasts, including on YouTube. Thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Enjoy tonight's action. Enjoy this weekend's action. Be kind to each other, and we'll see you right back here next week on Locked On NBA.